A live look at our nation's capital. We're developing right now. The Senate is expected to pass a package on foreign aid that includes a measure forcing TikTok to be sold from its Chinese parent company or be banned in the U.S. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar explains how this would work and how TikTok vows to fight back.
This time next year, Americans on TikTok may be a thing of the past.
The bill is passed without objection.
On Saturday, when the House passed a bill to force Beijing-based ByteDance to sell TikTok, an eventual ban of the popular app started to look inevitable.
The idea that we would give the Communist Party this much of a propaganda tool, as well as the ability to scrape 170 million Americans' personal data, it is a national security risk.
ByteDance does not want to sell, and even if it did, China has indicated it would not allow it. Export controls allow its government to prevent the sale of TikTok's algorithm. TikTok, which is headquartered in Los Angeles and Singapore, plans to fight back. In an internal memo to staff, the company said if the bill becomes law, they would challenge it in court. It's likely they'd argue the same thing they have in public, that a ban violates the First Amendment.
We're spending $2 billion to make sure that we're keeping TikTok safe. We have a U.S.-led team.
TikTok executives trying to counter Washington's narrative.
We have not been asked for any data by the Chinese government, and we have never provided it.
But according to recent reporting, during meetings with congressional staff, Chinese embassy officials sought to claim the company as Chinese. The Senate will start voting on this as soon as Tuesday, and it is expected to pass. The president says he supports the text and is eager to sign it into law. Then the countdown on TikTok's presence in the U.S. begins. ByteDance would have 9 months to sell TikTok to a buyer that is not controlled by a foreign adversary. The president could then grant a 3-month extension if a viable sale isn't yet finalized. Some of the 170 million Americans on TikTok aren't shy about what they think.
This is going to be the reason why I hate the federal government.
Like, the government can take away a literal app on our phones, and we're supposed to believe we're free?
The timing of the expected law gives its supporters some cover. Its ultimate result wouldn't be clear until after the November election. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
The Supreme Court has dismissed a lawsuit from Republican Senate candidate Kari Lake challenging the use of electronic voting machines here in Arizona. Lake filed the lawsuit during her failed campaign for governor back in 2022. She challenged whether the state's electronic voting machines assured a fair and accurate vote. The court dismissed the appeal today without comment. They found Lake and former Republican state lawmaker Mark Finchem had not been harmed in a way that allowed them to sue. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said the lawsuit was based on speculative concerns that the machines could be hacked and not that they had been hacked.
President Joe Biden celebrating Earth Day by announcing $7 billion in grant funding for solar power. The administration saying the money will allow nearly 1 million households in low-income and disadvantaged communities to benefit from solar power, saving more than $350 million in electric costs annually and more than $8 billion over the life of the program.
It's a big deal. This new Solar for All program means that 900,000 households, 900,000, will have solar on the rooftops for the first time and soon.
Biden's announcement comes days after his administration barred oil drilling in nearly half of the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, setting up a clear contrast with former President Donald Trump.
I want to drill, drill, drill.
During his push for a second term, Trump has spoken harshly of climate and conservation policies.
I will repeal Joe Biden's insane ethanol industry killing electric vehicle mandate.
Differing views that could play a role in a close election.
There's a clear contrast.
Hi, good evening to you. You can still hear the protesters chanting on their way out here after police asked them to safely and peacefully leave after blocking this intersection all day long. Now you can see police officers just kind of standing by, making sure that they follow those orders. Now this all comes after protesters sat in the middle of this road all day long, and there was an incident on campus earlier where more than 40 people got arrested. Yale University students and some community members chanting loud and clear for a free Palestine. Protesters putting pressure on the university since Friday, with students sleeping in tents overnight at the Beinecke Plaza.
Yale has a lot of investments in weapons manufacturers, and so we are demanding divestment and disclosure from Yale.
We are ready. Plans are in place. And these flights will go come what may. No foreign court will stop us from getting flights off. The first flight will leave in 10 to 12 weeks. Now, of course, that is later than we wanted, but we have always been clear that processing will take time. I can confirm that we've put an airfield on standby, booked commercial charter planes for specific slots, and we have 500 highly trained individuals ready to escort illegal migrants all the way to Rwanda, with 300 more trained in the coming weeks. Enough is enough. No more prevarication, no more delay. Parliament will sit there tonight and vote no matter how late it goes. No ifs, no buts. These flights are going to Rwanda.
Tomorrow, the Senate will vote on the same foreign aid bills that the House passed this weekend. It is several $billions in aid to Ukraine and Israel, along with a ban on TikTok. So senior reporter Brett Forrest is here joining me in studio to try to help break this down for folks.
Every good morning. So the bills include $60 billion to Ukraine, $26 billion to Israel, and $8 billion to Taiwan. And there's a ban on TikTok also included as part of that foreign aid package, unless that platform changes owners. So each vote passed with a strong bipartisan mix of Democrats and Republicans. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is supporting aid to Ukraine and even flew to Mar-a-Lago last week to get former President Trump's blessing. Now, in the fallout, some Republicans are considering ousting Johnson, but not all hardline Republicans are on board with that. That includes Representative Lauren Boebert from right here in Colorado.
I don't see how that solves anything. I am opposed to a motion to vacate, but it is gaining momentum. Maybe there's a point.
Former President Trump's criminal trial in New York started with opening statements today.
The first witness also briefly took the stand. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard has more from outside the Manhattan courthouse.
This was an intense first day inside of this lower Manhattan courtroom for the defense team and the prosecution, as not only opening statements were made by both sides, but also the first witness called. After jury selection moved quickly last week, seating 12 jurors and 6 alternates, those 18 individuals returned to this courthouse here today, along with defendant Donald Trump, as the two sides made their opening statements, laying out the case before the jury that they are going to make. For the prosecution, they're making the case that Donald Trump was part of an elaborate scheme beginning in the summer of 2015, shortly after he announced his run for the presidency, to cover up any potential damaging stories. And then for the defense, they make the case that the crimes charged against Donald Trump.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rachel Cole. Tram has the day off. It's the most significant appeal involving unhoused Americans to reach the Supreme Court in decades, and it's being closely watched by cities and states across the nation, including here in Arizona. This homeless issue in particular has come up in Phoenix, where a county judge ruled last year the city couldn't allow camping and had to clear out its largest homeless encampment known as the Zone. So joining me now for the backstory on this particular case and potential impact it could have on our state is 12 News journalist Erica Stapleton. Obviously, you cover a lot of these particular stories in the Valley. So why are there so many eyes watching from Arizona?
You know, Rachel, this could really shape policy on how cities address homelessness in the western states of this country. And before this grants pass decision, before this went to the Supreme Court, there was a 2018 ruling called Martin v. Boise that basically said you can't arrest someone, you can't criminalize homelessness if someone...
TikTok has a lot of reasons to fight, but also it's made it clear that it is not going to be backing down quietly.
Absolutely. And this bill is looking like it's inevitable that it becomes law. The Senate is meant to take up this bill as soon as tomorrow, but certainly this week. President Joe Biden said he would sign it into law as soon as it passes both chambers. So the fast track to reality of TikTok facing this divestiture ban legislation is here. Now, ByteDance, TikTok's Chinese parent company, the company that the U.S. government has taken issue with, has also expected that it's going to fight this tooth and nail through the U.S. legal system. If this bill goes into law with the current language, ByteDance would have 9 months, but the with a potential 3-month extension to divest the app. But that seems to be an action that would be the case of last resort for ByteDance, who does intend to draw this out and wage a legal battle that could last more than a year, according to people familiar with the matter.
Alex, what's the plan here? Is it to weather the storm and hope for a better administration somewhere down the track? And also, in terms of what's worse, is it a ban or is it divestment?
Well, if you do the math here on that timeline that they would have, let's say it passes this week, then that would put us right around January, which is inauguration time here in the U.S., as it is a presidential election year. So certainly we've seen TikTok in the past try to kind of lean into the idea of patience and looking for a more amenable administration. Donald Trump has changed his tune on TikTok. The man who was the first president to try to ban the app by executive order is now saying that it should in fact stay here in the U.S. So at the moment, if this bill does get signed into law, which Bloomberg Intelligence puts at a 90% chance of happening, then that might be their best recourse, is wait for an administration, if Donald Trump gets voted in, who is either going to drag out enforcement or might be a little bit more amenable while they do try to fight this on both First Amendment arguments and otherwise in the American judicial system.